Okay, perfect. We have transitioned. Thank you. So we have a great panel. There was so much interest in this panel today. You'll see that we're very full, but I'm excited to have a further discussion about data, how we're using it for decision making. Um, I know when I first came to the city, the Data Science Federation was I think maybe a year or maybe 2 years old, and so the team was really working across departments to see them or help them use data in a different way. So I'm excited today to have this esteemed panel. I'll share with you who we have. Um, I don't think we're in order of this screen, but we'll all figure it out, right? So you heard Louise from Hackla talk a little bit about Starry Internet, and so we're happy to have Virginia Lamb Abrams here, and Virginia is the Senior Vice President, Government Affairs and Strategic Advancement for Starry Internet. She's a seasoned communications and public affairs executive with 2 decades of experience working in technology, media, and politics. She's currently the senior vice president, and she's responsible for a wideband hybrid fiber and wireless technology that's used on building competitive, affordable, high quality broadband across the United States. In her role in the company, Virginia is responsible for leading Starry's digital equity program focused on developing partnerships with public and affordable housing owners to develop I'm losing my space, ultra low cost internet solutions to their residents. So we heard that in action today with the lightning talk from Hackla. So thank you for being here today, Virginia. And next we have Corey Davis right here next to me. So Corey is from Verizon. I hope you've been outside seeing their special truck outside, but Corey is Director of Verizon Response and Public Safety. He has over 16 years of advanced wireless technology and public safety leadership experience. He currently serves as the National Director for Verizon's Response and Public Safety Operations Team, and they're partnering with public safety and public sector agencies nationwide to help them stay connected, innovate, plan for the future, and mitigate pain points, as well as prepare for times of crisis, events, and emergencies across the US. And I think we can definitely say we've had that for the past almost 2 years now, right? So next we have, thank you for being here, Corey. Next we have Dr. Sriram, who is with UCLA. He recently came March 2021. So new, I don't think is it new to LA as well? New to LA and new to UCLA. So thank you for being here. He's working with our Bureau of Engineering on some of their fantastic work around assessing the hillside streets. Yes. So his main research areas are structural dynamics, system identification, robotics, and condition assessment of structural and mechanical systems. He received a PhD from Rice University in 2005 in the control of base isolated structures. When I was reading his bio, it really reminded me of all my studies in school because I did electrical engineering, but it's been a while. But as I mentioned, Dr. Sriram joined UCLA, their engineering school, in March 2021, leading sensors and robotics for infrastructure lab. So I'll stop there. There's a much longer bio, and we'll definitely have all this information on the site. Next, we have Brett Perez. Brett, thank you for being here. Brett is with AT&T. He's been there for 23 years. He manages and supports K through 12 higher education, state and local government accounts. He has a passion for technology, education, and smart city innovation. Currently, his primary responsibility as the company's expert for AT&T's Internet of Things, advanced mobile applications, and 5G portfolio. So thanks, Brett, for being here. And we have Captain Brian Wall, who's going to keep us safe today. He's from our LA City Fire Department. Captain Wall is works in emergency operations. He's a coordinator for homelessness, response liaison within the fire department. He's worked with the fire department for 19 years, held the ranks of firefighter, paramedic, engineer, Captain 1 and Captain 2. He is currently assigned to special duty in the Homeland Security Division. So thank you, Homeland Security Division Tactical Planning Section. Sorry, I didn't finish. His responsibilities include training, program development, and credentialing 96 members of the fire department's incident management teams. So thank you so much. Can't wait to hear, have you share what you're working on. It's some really cool work. And we also have Patricia Zulo. I think you prefer Patty. Do you prefer Patty? Yes. So Patty and I have actually crossed paths several times. Prior to being at the city, I was on her side of the table in the private sector, so I think we've crossed a little bit. But Patty is currently Senior Director for Smart City Solutions for Spectrum, a part of Charter Communications. Patty's responsible for defining and executing Spectrum's smart city go-to-market strategy and representing the company with industry groups and events to raise awareness of the Spectrum Smart City solution. She has over 20 years of experience leadership in this area. So thank you all. It's a full panel, and I'm excited to dig in with just to hear from you about data. So the first question I'll pose is, how are you using data to help the city of LA? And we have several areas, so I'll let you choose, whatever resonates most with you. But if we think about traffic management or crisis response, sustainability, public safety, internet connectivity, or any other area, how would you say that you're using data, or if you're not now planning to work with the city on data for improving and enhancing any of these services? We'll start with Patty.
Sure. So thank you very much. So we're not currently piloting any applications.
And make sure your mic's on. Sorry. There's a button.
Okay, great. So we're not, Spectrum right now isn't investing in a POC, a proof of concept, or a pilot. We'd love to. Some of the things that I heard today, though, how to leverage data really resonated with me. We're doing some pilots in other cities on train avoidance and vision zero for traffic management, making sure pedestrians are safe. But one of the things that I've heard consistently from the speakers today is digital equity, or just equity in general, and how do you understand what your residents need and how do you serve them. In another city, what we're doing today, they had a problem that they had a very, very high fatality rate for infants. And they couldn't figure, it was only in certain neighborhoods, and they couldn't figure out why. And so they gathered a significant amount of data. And what they found was the mothers had no way of getting to prenatal care. And so using that data, they were able to do multiple things. First of all, they deployed bus routes, different bus routes, to be specific in those neighborhoods and bringing them right to the doctors or the hospitals. The second thing they did was they did a subsidy program with Uber and Lyft, and allowed Uber and Lyft to get paid for picking up those residents in those areas, again, bringing the mothers to and from their healthcare appointments. They found that the infant mortality rate dropped dramatically, over 80%, once they were able to get healthcare to their residents. Again, this is all data. As Ted indicated when he was talking, you've got technology, you've got data, and you've got resources. Those three things together really can solve a tremendous amount of problems. That particular use case, it solved an immediate problem that city had. And so that's the type of functionality, that's the type of ingenuity, that's the type of creativity that we would love to be able to partner with the city of LA.
That's great. Thank you. I love how the use cases just come out, from something you're not suspecting, you know, and how everyone came together to really solve that. So great. I see. Yes, go
I
ahead,
just wanted
Virginia.
to actually, piggyback on something that that Patty said in terms of the use of data and helping and allowing companies and city governments to really be laser focused and directing resources to problems like the one that Patty mentioned. For us as an internet provider, when we partner with cities or with public housing authorities, it's really working with those either an agency or at a municipal level to really understand where there are connectivity gaps and where connectivity gaps exist, where we as a service provider can come in to help fill in those gaps. And so working in combination with that data at hand to be able to say, hey, this is where we have the greatest need, where can you contribute? That's really how we get to solving problems. And I think that's really what was the beauty of the partnership that we were able to form with the city, with the Digital Equity Coalition, as well as our partnership with HACLA, was be really laser focused on getting connectivity to the families that we knew did not have connectivity and needed it most. And that's really a great use of data. When you have finite resources, you really want to direct them to the places that need them most. And that's where data is really effective.
Thank you, Virginia. Brett, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I would like to add to that, actually. You know, I think it was Luis with the Housing Authority that had brought up adoption, right? Data is wonderful, and it's great when you get it from point A to point B and vice versa. But what we noticed in the last 12 to 24 months was the adoption of data and how it lacked, right? Just because you're placing it out there and the children are not adopting it the way that you want them to, you have to have the right analytics. That's first of all. You have to have the right platforms to help you understand that data. And then you have to have the capabilities of making sure that you articulate how that data is being used in a student environment. We have learned that so quickly and in such a hard way in the last 12 to 24 months, because our solution as a country was we were going to pepper students with hotspots. And we did that, and it worked well. T-Mobile did a great job of that. Verizon did an excellent job of that. AT&T, we all did an excellent job of that. Our networks held up remarkably well. But then we started peeling it back. And then we started noticing, hey, the adoption, they have the device, but they're not adopting the data. And so that is something that I think is critical for any city, not just the city of LA, but all the cities that are out there that are dealing with this digital divide that's in place, is make sure that we understand the platforms and the capabilities those platforms give us and seeing what that adoption rate is like for the new generation that we're trying to bring up.
Great, thank you. Yes, a reinforcement for the use of analytics to really understand what the data is telling us. Captain Brian?
Yeah, I'll speak to it from a safety perspective. On a daily basis, we've developed a series of metrics using our fire stat, which is similar to CompStat, which was brought to us through Chief Bratton many years ago, and identifying our response times from the time that we get a call from dispatch all the way through to getting on scene. And so there's several areas that we can look at to see if we're getting the right resource there through our dispatch system and tier dispatching that continues to evolve, to the time it takes to receive the call and any challenges that or gaps that may be identified, so we can improve that service response to the community. Another area on the homeless side, of persons experiencing homelessness, we provide a series of hazard assessments throughout the year. And so I've been part of the team to develop a data capture system for our field resources to then put it on a map and identify areas of where these hazards are, creating perhaps what we describe as heat mapping or targeted focused areas. So then we can start developing and determining what is the mitigation strategy, or what other outreach measures that can take place to help those folks that are in those areas. Why is this happening? Why are they having to tap into a fire hydrant or use electricity? And what are other means to provide these services? And so it's all driven by data. An exciting project that we're working on that I'll speak to more in the lightning round is actually using several data sources to determine fire prediction and fire spread during wildland firefighting, and then providing that decision to when to evacuate, which neighborhoods to evacuate, when and why, and having that information and intelligence ahead of time using several different validation methods so that we can maintain a level of safety and provide these predictions well ahead of the event happening. So it's used every day. Those are just a few projects, but there's several more that we're working on to provide public safety.
Great, thank you so much. Excited to hear more in the lightning round. So let's just continue. I think the way you all sat, it's all working out well for my commentary. So, because now we're going to continue like this thread on resilience and safety. And Dr. Sriram, I know with your project around hillside assessments, can you just share a little bit more around how you're using data to really, from a resilience perspective to keep us safe?
Specifically on the project, I think we're just getting started, so I think don't have a lot of results to share. I can generally speak to the whole area of using data. My perspective is I think a lot of at least in the last decade or so, most of my research and my team's research has focused on getting insights from data. So we look at this problem of data not in isolation, but I think the data has to fundamentally provide us with insights that are actionable. And the problem with a lot of the sensors on the upstream that have developed over the last, 2 decades, it's been astronomical growth in sensing and communication technologies. They're largely driven agnostic to any particular application. So especially in my area's infrastructure, trying to understand or extend the lives of infrastructure, how do we better manage infrastructure, how do we get the most out of infrastructure so that we don't have to replace them as we were supposed to when we first put it in place. The idea is when we started looking at this problem of gaining insights from data, we realized that we actually cannot get much insights from the data, at least in certain applications, without actually going back and developing sensors and sensor systems that can provide us the kind of data that will allow us then to infer useful information from them. So sort of my research has sort of progressed over the last decade or so in developing simultaneously sensor systems. For example, I'm working now with the US Navy here in Port Hueneme, where we are putting sensors on fire hydrants actually to detect leaks in water distribution systems, because about 20-30% of water is lost between treatment and delivery. Similarly, we're working on projects where we have to develop these things from ground up almost, trying to solve certain problems that are unique to infrastructure. Now, coming to this project that I'm doing I'm working in partnership with Bureau of Engineers and Ted right here. So one of the questions that we started looking at is when we're dealing with reintegrating hundreds of miles of hillside streets into the city of LA, into the maintenance programs, routine maintenance programs, many of the manual techniques that we employ for inspections and data collections are not scalable at those levels. So we're looking at techniques in computer vision where we are using simple handheld, simple GoPro type cameras with geocoded images and sort of fusing them with some high fidelity LiDAR and 3D LiDAR information to be able to get a good sense of which streets need to be prioritized in which order, and to get a sense of how the whole inventory sort of, we're able to filter through the entire inventory, or that's what we hope to do, is to filter down to these different levels of capital works, replacement capital works that needs to be undertaken, so that we can eventually bring almost all of this hillside inventory into the purview of maintenance programs. So data is so critical here, but it's more, data is just one part of the story. Now we have the ability to collect insane amounts of data just with a $200, $300 camera. But I think what we do with the data, there's also needs to be a lot of effort put into gaining actionable insights from such data. So the work we're doing with LA Bureau of Engineers is trying to sort of attack this problem from both these perspectives.
Great, thank you so much. Last but
Yeah.
not least.
And to piggyback off of that, I think what happens is these cities that we find, they get this massive amount of data, and then it's okay, what do we do with it, right? So I think something that we've been working on is how do we take a consultative approach and really partner with the cities on the good data versus the bad data, One of the platforms, Brett brought up platforms, is very important, is our real-time response system. And what this does is essentially takes all of the dashboards, all of the platforms, everything that you're using from a public safety perspective, and put it under one pane of glass. That way you're not looking at multiple different screens, multiple different systems going back and forth. You can look at one screen, one system. You have all your dispatch, all your information right there at your hands, right? So it streamlines everything, makes things more efficient. And then we talk about resiliency. We've literally spent billions of dollars in the state of California building resiliency into our network, right? Because all the data is great, but if you don't have connectivity, it doesn't work. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is we're working, we just did a partnership with Amazon on the Kuiper project. I don't know if anybody's heard of Kuiper. It's LEO, so it's low Earth orbit satellites. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to think, hey, what happens when there is that, God forbid, 8.0 earthquake, all infrastructure is down? How do we provide connectivity to first responders when there's absolutely zero connectivity? And I can tell you through this Kuiper project, Starlink is another company that's doing similar LEO projects. We are seeing download speeds of over 200 megabits down and 50 megabits up. That's through satellite. And normal satellite today, through geospatial satellite, you get anywhere from 30 down to 50 up. So we're talking about literally providing 5G type speeds and access to first responders anywhere in the world when there's zero infrastructure.
Thank you. No, it's so important. Especially being here in California, we don't know which
Fire,
incident's going to
earthquake,
happen,
flood,
right?
mudslide.
But we're all prepared. We have all the right people to protect us, so we're good.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Thank you, Captain.
Great. So I'm going to ask, I know we're kind of over time, but I do want to make sure that we get input from everyone. So I'll ask 2 more questions, but I'll ask that you split responses 3 and 3. I'll let you decide which one, who goes for what. So if you go first, I know you'll not regret that you missed out on the second one. Okay. But and I think Patty, you brought it up, the mission about equity and how we're using data, and Virginia, you also spoke to that a little bit too. So I do want to ask, how are you using data to analyze equity in services? Are you doing gap analysis to identify areas of eligibility versus applications or subscribers? So that also kind of gets to the point earlier about adoption. Like, we can have everything out there, but if we don't make sure that there's adoption, then we run into the problem of people not being able to access the services we're providing.
That's a really great question. And those data points around adoption and what the barriers were to adoption actually informed how we structured our Starry Connect program in the first place. So Starry Connect is a specialized partnership program where we work with public and affordable housing owners to provide an ultra low cost, high quality broadband product to residents without requiring credit checks or other eligibility requirements. We did this specifically because feedback that we received and data that we received from housing partners as well as HUD showed us that while there were an abundance of low-cost offerings that were available to residents, most were not adopting because of these barriers. So what we wanted to do was remove those 2 main barriers. So by not requiring a credit check, that was one big obstacle that we removed. The second one was not requiring individual eligibility requirements. So what we did was actually tie eligibility for our low-cost program to the premise, to the actual housing community, where we qualified an address as opposed to an individual. So it didn't matter who lived at 123 Main Street, apartment 3B, as long as that apartment unit and that address was in our program, they would always have access, that resident would always have access to our program. And so we use data to actually inform the structure of our digital equity program so that we could reach the most people possible with the broadest tent possible to get connectivity, again, pinpointed in public and affordable housing communities where we know they have the highest rates of unconnectedness and generally underserved.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to chime in on the equity? equity question?
I will. So at Verizon, what I'm really proud about that we're doing is our VILS program. So it's our Verizon Innovative Learning Program. We've stood this up since 2012, and essentially what we've done is identified since 2012 about 511 Title I middle schools and high schools that are underserved, severely underserved. So what we've been able to do is go in there, provide free internet access, free tablets. But I think what Verizon did a really good job taking it to the next level is we actually worked with a few of the universities and helped provide the curriculum, right? Because what we found is, hey, it's great to give a student, an underserved, Title I student, an iPad or a phone, but if we don't teach them how to use it properly, then it turns into the hotspots that are laying around everywhere, and that you don't get the adoption rate. So, again, we served, there's tens of them here in LA County alone, where we're able to provide these services. And we've gotten almost a 95% take rate from teachers that have said, this has made a huge impact on our schools. Our kids are coming, they're motivated to learn. And what was interesting is, we've been doing that since 2012, and we've actually seen these VILS schools in COVID, since they've had this technology, done really well. Because you're taking an underserved school that is now tasked to be learned at home, which they're already in potential difficult home situations, but these kids had the right curriculum built and a foundation, so they're thriving.
Right.
Because they have this technology now.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're doing to help the digital divide gap, make sure that we're addressing the right schools and making sure that we have the right curriculum so that they can continue to move forward.
Great, thank you so much. The literacy piece is so important.
Yeah.
And it's important for our seniors as well, our students as well as seniors. I think the pandemic has really shown across the board how important it is to make sure everyone has that education and that curriculum. Do we have a third taker on this question? All silent?
I'll jump in there a little bit because,
Okay.
Corey, you bring up a valid point on how, the carriers have gone about addressing the digital divide. At AT&T, we have lots of assets. We have fiber assets. We first of all approached the market with our broadband product, and our price points were sub $20, in order for us to get into the home and make sure that we gave the connectivity that some of these homes were looking for. That was our first approach in the marketplace. And then our second approach was, of course, right, we went towards the tablets, the hotspots, and making sure that the adoption and the rate plans were meeting the needs of the marketplace. And when I say the marketplace, it's mainly your K through 12 schools and some programs where the schools were offsetting the cost of these hotspots if the parents went out and bought it. But credit was a big issue, right? Because we are talking about families that struggle in this area when it comes to credit. And so we took the same approach. AT&T, when we offered our broadband solutions to the home, we made sure that we did not go and adhere to our credit rules. In the past, all that we required was to make sure that that customer did not owe AT&T any money at that point, and that we were waiving, those sort of fees up front in order for that adoption to happen in the household. So, you think as a carrier, do we sit here in a slouch chair and kind of look at the environment? We actually went a lot of different, we bent over so many different directions to make sure that we met the needs of the marketplace inside of this digital divide environment. And it wasn't just in a wireless perspective. We did it from a landline perspective as well. So Corey, you're spot on with the adoption and how you go about doing that. We had very many different tactics in place when we went to address this in the nation.
So customer data being looked at in a different format that probably had been being
Absolutely.
used before.
Usually credit was the data, right?
Right.
We assess everything in credit in our country, unfortunately, and that is not fortunate for the less deserving, within our country. So we kind of, overlooked that in that instance, just to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the public.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will say this just on the note on credit. In the new affordable connectivity program that is going to replace the emergency broadband benefit, a requirement of participating providers is that they cannot require a credit check in order for consumers to avail themselves of the benefit. So that we think is a huge win. That's something that we lobbied very heavily on on the Hill. We think credit checks should not be a barrier to connectivity. They shouldn't be there in the first place. And so we're really excited that that is a provision in this new affordable connectivity program.
I like it. Data for good. We're using data for good. So thank you all for sharing. The next set of three, your question, I'd love for if you could give an example of a city decision, either an action taken or a policy, whether, and if you're not with the city, maybe you saw it in another city, but that was driven by the use of new technology and or a new way of capturing data. So it's a perfect segue from the last answer that you gave, Brett, but I'd love to hear some other examples.
This is a fascinating example, and this was the pandemic drove this. We saw across the United States that garbage was not being disposed inside of city dumpsters because citizens were not coming into the city and the cities were not active anymore, right? Just from a refuse standpoint. And so it was interesting because cities all of a sudden became very interested in their garbage because the trash haulers are usually set contracts with cities on how many times they touch your dumpster, not how full your dumpster is. And so we started quickly finding out that cities were coming to us saying, hey, do you have sensors for dumpsters? We're like, well, wow, okay, what's going on here? And they're like, well, our dumpsters aren't full, but we're paying our dumpster bill every month. And we need data to where we can negotiate with our trash haulers how we want to manage our trash moving forward. And so that was a neat insight that we gathered over the last 12 months. And now we're seeing sensors being placed in trash cans, dumpsters all over the United States. So they have the analytics and the data that they can now negotiate with their trash haulers as they move forward. And the trash cans, they may be full, they may not be full, but now the cities have the insight to go and negotiate those contracts moving forward. So yeah, that's some insight that we've captured over the last 24 months.
That's a great example. My other panelists?
Yeah, so we've also seen a huge uptake in smart waste. I never thought I'd have those two words together, but and it's not just with negotiating the contracts, it's also trying to understand fleet management. Yeah. Being able, those trucks are all in the right-hand lane. They slow down traffic when they're picking up trash on the street. So how do you manage that better? So we are seeing an uptake in that. We also saw in the pandemic, a lot of cities, LA might have been one of them, that wanted to utilize the right-hand lane to expand out eating facilities. So using the right-hand lane to actually help social distance so you can eat outside. Data helped them do that. That is all, both analytics and data was able to be captured and understand, and of course, working with public safety to make sure they could do it safely. We saw that happen. We also we're working in a city in Florida right now that has a lot of blind intersections, and what they uncovered was when we provided analytics, they used to have somebody standing on a corner doing hash marks. When they were able to do analytics, they found within one day, 21 people in an hour did illegal U-turns. Mm-hmm. And it's a hidden intersection, a T intersection. It's a hidden, so it's a bad intersection already. Well, what they're doing with that data now is realizing they have a traffic planning problem. They need to re-architect that area because obviously there's something that 21 people in an hour are trying to get to on the other side of the street. And so we're helping them plan the changes that they can implement to make it safer, but still move people around the city. It's all just being able to collect data and really analyze that data, leverage the data to help the city solve a problem, whatever that problem is.
Right, great. Wow, very interesting. Reimagining the entire intersection. Is our DOT team still in here?
I'm not saying you should rip up roads. I'm not saying that at all.
No.
but
I'm just sure those are some
it's-
challenges they face all
Yeah,
the time.
it's interesting. I mean, U-turns.
Yeah,
I mean, something's going on.
I plead the fifth.
No, like, I live in Arizona. We have wrong way driver issues where people get on the wrong off ramp.
Yep.
And they're causing fatalities, issues where we're able to put in sensors, thermal cameras,
Yep.
et cetera. But that's an issue too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Captain Brian, anything on the data used to change a policy or take a new action?
Probably in relation to public safety and our involvement with the persons experiencing homelessness in the city, obviously a very challenging and complex topic. And it's really a collaborative effort through the mayor's office and the Unified Homelessness Response Center. Through every agent or every department has representation in there. So Bureau of Engineering, to LAPD, to LASA, to DOT, Parks and Rec for mass care and sheltering. And really it's the use of data that's mapped, right? So to kind of add on to the previous response that I had, having the mapping component and a visualization of really what the impacts are in the city has driven a lot of decision making on how we're going to approach this challenge, right? So it's not only a challenge of trying to get persons experiencing homelessness sheltered. There's all the other components and subordinate and ancillary issues that come along with that have to be addressed, right? It's what do you do today in terms of showering, and what do you do today in terms of having a place to go to the bathroom and restroom, and do we have mobile units, and how many do we have, and where are the impact areas, and where can we be most effective? So it's a constant analysis of data, really resource management and utilization of supply efforts in an outreach capacity to determine what do we do today, how do we move forward, and in this trajectory along, the next year, 2 years, 3 years, what does that look like? And I've seen that every single day, but really being driven by the data that's captured in the field and field resources to be able to provide that in an illustration based on a mapping component. Yeah.
No, it's great. My head is spinning with all of all the moving parts to really make that happen and make those decisions. Sriram, any final comments on data for policy and change?
So I think from obviously I'm a university academic, so I see data, the use of data and how it impacts us a little bit differently, because I think I'm not looking at an immediate need for data for governing any policy decisions, because I don't think we make any policy decisions. But I think from a data touches our lives in very different ways. There's data touching our lives in real time, right? I take the Culver City bus almost every day to come to work. And the first thing I do is open my app and look at a real-time map. It's just a GPS sensor, as simple as having a GPS sensor on a bus. It makes all the difference because I'm able to plan. It's a 5-minute walk from my place to the bus stop. And I plan accordingly. That means I'm more efficient about how I'm using time. So real-time data is golden, I think. Then there is the data, and then also another same example of a real-time data is purple air. I'm a big fan of air quality data. I was in the Bay Area when the wildfires were happening last year ago, or a year and a half ago now. And the Santa Cruz fire, then there was a fire in Milpitas. There are fires all around where we used to live. And I like to run every day, right? Yes, my heart went out to all these communities when I looked at all the data, but also what's important is, can I go out to run today? To me, that was very important in the morning. So real-time data, like air quality data or bus, like when the bus is going to arrive, it's going to touch us in so many little ways. So I don't think we need to look beyond just how it impacts our lives on a day-to-day basis to see how data is going to influence us. I think the challenges that I see are those data sources that don't provide direct information like a GPS, right? I also saw an article where I think the LA Streets was employing GPS on their street sweepers so they can better manage street cleaning and things like that, optimize their cleaning schedules. But I think we are at a cusp where data has become cheap. The GPS sensors that used to cost thousands of dollars cost a few dollars now to purchase, at least the low quality ones. Communication is also, thanks to companies like Verizon and AT&T and all of them, it's mind-boggling how much connectivity we have. On top of it, we have a lot of the long-range connectivity like LoRa and other things that are specifically for IoT. I think we have come to a stage where we have picked off all the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And I think we should continue doing it. Wherever there's, like, for example, the waste trash that I was hearing, that's great. Low-hanging fruit, we could put a sensor there to figure out. But I think where things are going to become a little bit difficult is how do we use data to address equity issues, environmental justice? These problems are not directly like, hey, I put a sensor to find out where there's inequity. That's not going to happen, right? So I think where a lot of the challenges are going to be is how are we going to synthesize all of these different data sources? Some of them could not be data from a sensor. It could be data from a piece of paper, data which is anecdotal. How do we synthesize all of these various data sources and address some of the grand challenges we have today, like climate change or environmental justice or social inequities, right? I think to me, data has a big role to play, but I personally have not wrapped my head around how you can effectively use data as one of your prime tools in your toolkit to be able to address environmental justice or climate change or poverty or hunger. I think to me, I think that is the biggest, I would say, unknown right now. I think it can be done. Data has a very central role to play, but I think we need to sort of think about data in a different way to be able to address these grand challenges.
No, that's great. I think, I'm thinking of the Sustainable Development Goal work, where we actually built a data repository to show our progress towards the goals. The city has adopted the goals to a local level. So I'm happy to share that with you and see, and you can see some of the work that's happening in that area. But also, as you were talking, I was thinking about how do we combine sentiment analysis, like capture the data of sentiment analysis, along with the sensor data that's out there to really try and move things forward, like the personal use cases that you mentioned about the bus, when is it coming, or can I go out and run today? Those are a lot of the visualizations that the tools that we have now with our mobile phones provide us. And then on top of that, there's the layer of what our public safety teams do, to make sure that they're mitigating the risks when we do go outside. And then the dashboards that help us understand from a high, at the government level or corporate level, or those from the higher structures who are looking at it from a big picture, like what is that dashboard telling us? But it definitely all comes together. And I think you all have made some great points. And I hope everyone listening today is taking away some new insights. One thing I do want to ask before we leave, I know I said 2 questions, but I have a third one. Like 30 seconds, what should people look for at your booths today?
So what we're showing is not only how to modernize the network to make it capable of handling some of these advanced solutions. We also have a data platform that absorbs any data from sensors that are already installed in the city, data sensors that we're installing, putting it all in a single pane of glass, allowing you to do full data analytics.
There's two main things that are, well, there's 3 actually. One of those is going to be, we spoke about the data quite heavily in this session, but there's always the security that's wrapped around data, right? Data can move, ebb and flow however you want, but you always have to make sure that that data is secure. That's one of the things that us at AT&T, we take pride in that. Security is one of our top pillars on how we traverse the data that your city is using back and forth over the network. The 2 things that you'll see at our table today, One is the advancement of ATMS, Advanced Traffic Management System platforms, moving from a fiber, black or dark fiber-based environment into a cellular-based environment because the networks have the capability and the latency in place today to manage your traffic lights, right? We do that on our commercial network, and we also do that on our AT&T FirstNet core. Our FirstNet core was specifically built for our first responders, as well as the critical infrastructure which your traffic lights are today. The other element that you'll see at our table is going to be smart lighting advancements, right? The femtocell that is placed on top of the lights that give your lights the capabilities of dimming, but also give your lights the capabilities of having Wi-Fi as well as cellular-based enablement placed on them. And that will also assist with the digital divide. As you can imagine, if you're going down the street and you have lights in place and you have a Wi-Fi based or cellular-based node on top of that light, that will propagate up to 300 feet. That can penetrate into homes. It can penetrate into common areas, parks, and things of that nature. You'll find those type of solutions at the AT&T table.
At the Starry table, you will learn more about how we're furthering digital equity through our Starry Connect program and also through our partners who help enable device access as well as digital literacy programs. And then you'll also be able to see some storyboards around our network architecture and how we build out connectivity in cities. And you'll be able to actually see one of our base stations as well as one of our home receivers.
Great.
I don't have a booth, so sorry.
But there's a lightning talk.
So
Right
I'll
after this.
pass it on.
Yes, so at our booth, we have examples of some of the sensors, so advanced sensors like 3D LiDARs and cameras that we're using for the hillside study with the Bureau of Engineers. Also some sample results of computer vision algorithms we run on the visual data to be able to sort of do segment streets and automatically identify objects using machine learning algorithms.
And then at the Verizon booth, you'll find a lot of the platforms around data analytics like traffic management, intelligent video, intelligent lighting. And then we're also showcasing our crisis response team, which is a 24/7, 365 team that is dedicated for first responders to make sure that they have connectivity when and where they need it most. And we have one of our spot trailers, which is a satellite pico cell and a trailer, we call it. And we take those out to all these wildfires, the base camps and the spike camps that have zero connectivity. So what you see out there, the red trailer, is what we take to, basically all the fires, when it's either Cal OUS, Cal Fire, any of the multiple federal agencies that call us to come and bring connectivity. That's what we bring to them so that they can communicate back to either HQ or, the wildland firefighters that are out, just to make a phone call to their wife or kid to say, hey, I'm okay. We find that goes a long ways too. So
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of you spending your time with us today. Thank you. We hope that you've learned something new. We will transition right to a lightning talk because it's 4:18. But thank you so much. It's been great.
Thanks
Thank
for having us,
you.
Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks.